Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Cafe Oleh. Um, yeah. Hope you had a good holiday season. Hope your holidays were meaningful. Things are obviously very different right now here in Israel, and I'm sure wherever you are in the world. And as much as today's class was going to be about getting back to business and talking about order and all the different words we need in this period we call Achrei Chagim, after the holidays, which we talked about, I wanted to take this opportunity to review some important words and directives here in Israel, in Hebrew, and directives as well on staying safe, staying alert, staying informed, but also taking care of ourselves at the same time. And equally important, um, how we and some positive things we can do, some active things we can do to be helpful here. Um, sorry, just trying to help some people join in. I can't. And so today I want to do a few things. If you've never joined us before, first off, welcome. We're at 150 people, um, which is absolutely amazing in this time and in general. But here at Cafe Oleh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need in Israel to survive and thrive, whether that's reading the news, and we're going to talk about that a lot today, reading and paying your electricity bills and utility bills, going grocery shopping, striking up conversations, all the everyday things you do in your native languages, but here in Israel in modern Hebrew. We always want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. Please write to us, hebrew@nbn.org.il, or if you're joining us on Zoom, you can write us in the chat box here on Zoom with any questions, comments, concerns, requests you have. We'd love to hear from you. You can also see all of our previous lessons up on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Oleh or Nefesh B'Nefesh, you'll get the whole previous list. If you've registered us with us on via Zoom, you'll get a recording of this lesson along with the attached spreadsheet of vocabulary. You can always join us there. You can always also get the information on YouTube. It does take us 1 or 2 days. It does need to be manually uploaded as well as manually sent. So for all of you who are that passionate that an hour after the class is over, you ask, where's the lesson? Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your interest in learning Hebrew and joining us on Cafe Oleh. It does take some time. We're a large organization. We're also a very small organization. So bear that in mind when you contact us within 12 hours of a class and it's not up yet. It simply is, there are a lot of things going on right now in general, and especially with the organization. Like I started, we're going to try to do as much as we can here as possible. Hold on just a second. We're gonna try to cover a lot today. I just have a few housekeeping rules. First off, if you have any questions about what I'm specifically going through today, please write in the Q&A. Anything else that's not relevant to this class, please write it in chat. I will have space for questions and answers throughout this class, but please write them in the Q&A. There's a lot of you. There's now 170 of you on this call, which is absolutely amazing. But there's only one of me. So please be thoughtful about your questions, what I can cover and what I cannot cover. I'm not going to get into political diatribes. That's not the point of this class. Even when we cover media literacy, that is not the point of this class. I can answer a lot of questions objectively about Israel and the Middle East and what's happening right now, but I will not engage in anything political or certainly anything that is a diatribe and not based in facts. And I'm also going to give you some practical information throughout the day as well. We're also going to look at the news sources I use on a regular basis in Hebrew. Even though they're all in Hebrew, I'm hoping as we do more and more classes on media literacy, and you can see our previous classes on YouTube, getting you to the point where you're no longer relying on non-Hebrew language news. Because as always, and I'm going to say this until the Messiah arrives, if you want to be the most updated in Israel, it has to be in Hebrew. Any English language media originating in Israel is not for local consumption, it is for international consumption. I know people are glued to the TV watching I-24, which is an amazing resource. If you are here in Israel, I want you speaking Hebrew, which means just like all the other Israelis glued to their TV sets on channel 11, 12, or 13. Okay? You can watch I-24. I'm not bad-mouthing it, but you're not going to get the same depth of coverage than you will in Hebrew. I'm not expecting any of you to be fluent by the end of this, but I'm going to give you some tools to be as much attuned to what's happening as possible, along with some other information. So with that, let's open up today's class. Okay, I'm just going to move around this. X. Make it a little bit easier to see. Okay. Delete column. Okay. So we've covered these words before in unfortunate other situations where we needed to. This is a different situation than we've been in before for so many reasons. But nonetheless, it's worth reviewing a lot of these words because for some of you, this is your first time dealing with a anything security situation, let alone being in a war. And this is very much a war that we're in right now. So all the better to understand a little bit of the words that you're hearing, and some of the directives, and also review some of the basic safety information if you don't understand them in Hebrew, going through them again today. So first off, I didn't put the word for war. I assume many of you know this word already, which is milchama. The other words you're going to be hearing a lot in these days is maracha. Maracha is a campaign, a military campaign, or a military battle. We use this word really rarely, except for the full name of Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day. And we talk about that when we get closer to the day, and you can see our previous lesson about it on YouTube. But the full name of Yom HaZikaron is actually a very long name. It is Yom HaZikaron Lechalalei Ma'archot Yisrael U'Pe'ulot HaIva. It's a very long name, but it's the Memorial Day for those who have fallen in Israel's battles or military campaigns. So I have to just keep checking WhatsApp because that's our life right now, and people who forget that I teach right now. Okay. So Maracha, and you're going to hear about Marachot, campaigns and battles, quite a lot in the news for a bit. This is related to the same root, and we talk about roots here a lot. Shorashim, the three letters that make up all words. This one particularly is Ein Resh Chaf, from which we also get the word Marechet. Marechet is a system, any kind of system. It can be a computer system. It could be a Marechet Yachasim, which is a relationship. It literally translates to a system of relations or relations system. It's a very cold term for what we call a human-to-human relationship, romantic or platonic. But these are the words that you'll hear a lot. These two words are very difficult. We talked about this back in Corona time. You remember that all those years ago when people were messing up and flipping the letters for the words nivdak and nidbak, one meaning someone was checked and someone was infected, both using the same three letters but in a different order. Remember, in modern Hebrew, spelling is destiny. You may not misspell words in Hebrew. Even if the letter sounds similar to another, it is a completely different word. You need to think of Shorashim and the entirety of Hebrew grammar, as I always explain, as 7th and 8th grade algebra. X times Y equals XY. You change any of those variables, you have a completely different equation. Okay, X times Y, X is the shoresh, the root, Y is the format, the mishkal or the binyan that we use to create a word, and XY is the milah, is the word. We have a couple really great lessons on that on YouTube of how we construct Hebrew words and also deconstruct them to understand. Okay, These two words sound really similar, and they're used usually in very similar contexts, especially nowadays. But it's important you understand the difference between the two of them and their sound and how they're spelled. The first word is hatra'a or hatra'a, depending on how you say the letter resh. Hatra'a is an alert. Okay, we have other words for alert, and we're going to get to that in a little bit, but this is a word for hatra'a, any kind of alert. Okay, hatra'a. As opposed to the word for deterrence, the act of deterring someone or something, which is harta'a. And oftentimes you will hear on the news when they're talking about the situation we're in now, or in general, anything with security or terror related, they'll use these two words so much that they themselves trip up on them. Because hatra'a and harta'a in modern Hebrew, because we don't have a difference between aleph and ayin, can get very difficult. But just know these are the two words you're going to hear a lot, and they also get mixed up with each other because alert and deterrence are part and parcel of a larger thing there, but they're different stages of the same thing, as it were. Pikura Oleh. Pikura Oleh is our most important tool right now. Whatever you think about politics and government and the military and everything that's happened in the last 2.5 days, Pikura Oleh is known as the Home Front Command in English. This is the section of the military, of the IDF, that is in charge of civilian population. They're the ones who determine security guidelines for people depending on where they live in the country. So right now, if you live anywhere around the Gaza border, almost the entirety of the south of Israel, all the way north to here in Tel Aviv, where I am, we are under the same directive, whether you live right next to the Gaza Strip or up here in Tel Aviv, which is close to 80 miles away. We're under the same directive, which limits the amount of people who can be in the same indoor space, the same outdoor space together, in terms of congregating in places that do and do not have a safe space, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. All sorts of other directives. All of them are available in English on Pikura Oleh's website, so you can go to Homefront Command and do this. Many of you also have the alert system on your phone that is built by Homefront Command to let you know where a siren is going off. If you don't have this app and you live in Israel, listen to me carefully. You don't have to listen to my suggestion or not. Please don't download the app for your own safety and sanity. If you cannot hear the air raid siren going off in your immediate vicinity, and air raid sirens are placed very specifically throughout Israel so that everyone can at least hear it in the distance, if not blaring. Mine is diagonally across from my apartment, a block away, and it's very loud. Some people, it's not very loud. You can set it to your specific region and zone. All of Israel is mapped out into specific zones, and on the website, you'll see all of them. Tel Aviv is called, where I live is Tel Aviv Lev Ha'ir, or Dan Lev Ha'ir, depending on which one it is. I think it's called Dan 106 also. And so if I were to have the app on my phone, I would have it directed so it only goes off in my zone. Why? Because it's going off nonstop for the last 2.5 days in and around the Gaza Strip. None of us, no matter if you live in Israel, far away from Gaza Strip, and you're far away from there, God willing, right now, or you're abroad and you want to show your solidarity with Israel, no one needs to go through the pain of that siren going off every other second. Please, please listen to what I say. And if you do have it downloaded, and I experienced this on the bus while donating today, please keep it to silent or on vibrate. It went off nonstop by a well-meaning French woman, older French woman today, and it gave me a heart attack. That is not fair to people around you. It is not fair to your own health. Promise you, it's not good for your health. If you cannot hear the siren going off near you, download it and make sure that it's directed just for your area. Do not have it going on nationwide. You will do yourself a great disservice. We need to stay healthy and resilient. Equally with that is the word hanchaya. You know this word from Corona time. Hanchaya is a directive. So all those directives I talked about in terms of how many people can be outside or inside together, The fact that school has been closed since Sunday and will be closed through tomorrow nationwide. That's not just this region, but all of the country, and further instruction as to when it will reopen. Those are all called a directive. Hanchaya, hanchayot, plural. Okay, speaking of the siren, a siren, any kind of siren, is a tzfira. Tzfira, by the way, if it sounds familiar, it's because it comes from the same root as tzipor, a bird, right? They both make that same, not the same, but a sound. They are identified by a sound that travels through the air, right? So a tzfira is a siren. Specifically, the one that we've been hearing for the on and off for the last 2.5 days is a tzfirat azaka. It's a alert or an alarm siren that's going off. Okay, that's how we refer to it, tzfira or azaka. You'll see on the news, for example, when it goes off, on the right-hand screen will be directives from Pikura Oleh, from that same home front command, which will say where there is a missile directed towards and to seek immediate shelter. And it'll say, usually in big letters at the bottom, azaka, and then in the region. So today there were a lot of azakot throughout Israel. It'll say something like azaka be'otef Aza, an alert in the area immediately around Gaza. Okay, 2 words that are used interchangeably, but you will see it on the right hand of the screen as well. Okay. By the way, just breaking, it's not in here. If you are here just as a reminder, wherever you are in the country, to know how much time you have between when the tzfirat azaka is sounded, when the siren is sounded, and it's an up and down siren sound, to when you need to seek shelter. If you are here in the center of the country and in Jerusalem, you have 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds to seek shelter. We're going to talk about what that shelter is in just a second. The closer you get to Gaza and the closer you get to the northern border, the less time you have, if not already under a directive to be near a protected space. We're going to talk about that right now. But part of what you'll see on Home Front Command is not just what region you're in, but how many seconds you have to get to a safe space. 1.5 minutes here in the center of the country in Jerusalem, folks, is a long time. 90 seconds is a very long time. Be safe. Know where you need to go. We'll talk about that right now. But you don't need to panic and you don't need to incite a stampede, much less, God forbid, be in one. Okay. Milchav Mugan. Milchav Mugan. Oh, sorry, just one more thing before I get to that. Pikura Oleh. The name for Pikura Oleh. Pikud means command. Okay, we have all sorts of different commands in the military. We have Pikura Tzafon, the North Front Command, the Northern Command. Pikud Hamelkaz, the Central Command. Pikuda Darom, the Southern Command, right? These are all geographical districts. Pikuda Oleh. Oleh, or Oref, depending on how you say the letter Resh, is this. It's the back of your neck. Okay, it's this. And the Oleh, we translate into English as home front. In Hebrew, this is your Oleh. The Oleh is the back of your neck. It's the term that was used for the Israelites in the desert. The women and children, the elderly folk, were in the back of the Israelites going through the desert, right? Oleh is considered a sensitive part. It's an exposed part, right? And so there's a pikud, there's a command to protect the most exposed part of your sensitive body, the back of your head, the back of your neck in particular. That's the word Oleh. It does not mean home front, literally. It means this. Okay. Okay, let's get back to it. Milchav Mugan. Milchav is a space, right? It comes from the word rachav, wide. Milchav is any kind of physical space. Territory, you can also translate it as, but space. Not space as in outer space. It's more, think of flat space. Okay. And mugan is protected or defended. It comes from the same root as hagana, defense, lehagen, to defend. Mugan, defended or protected. Milchav mugan is any space that is considered safe according to Pikuda Oleh, where you can seek shelter in the event of a incoming missile. If you are in an apartment building like I am, that usually means you have to go 2 floors down in the stairwell and stay by the thickest part of the wall. If you are in any other, if you are outside and you can't seek shelter inside a safe space, that usually means lying flat against the ground with your hands behind your back, behind your head on your Oleh. If there's a retaining wall, it's often outside is crouching down by them. Or it's oftentimes in our apartment buildings or in our office buildings, a miklat. A miklat is simply a shelter, but we use it when we're talking about a bomb shelter, right? It's usually in the basement. It's made of thick walls. It has an air ventilation system in the event it needs the door, which is also a hallmark of it. The door needs to shut entirely and often locks on the inside. Um, Buildings by law have to have some sort of milchav mugan, whether it's the stairwell or a shelter or the next one we're about to get to. But also the municipality where you live has public miklatim tziburim, as we call them. And as of now, everywhere in the center of the country southward has opened up their miklatim. So these could be in community centers, these could be in synagogues, these could be in office or public buildings, whatever it may be. That's what a miklat is. It's both means shelter in a larger sense, but when you see a sign that says in Hebrew without the nikud, the dots and bars like this, miklat, that's where you're supposed to seek shelter during, if you're here in Tel Aviv, for example, those 90 seconds. If you are in and around the Gaza Strip, particularly, let's say in a town like Sderot, you'll see something called a migunit. Migunit comes from the same word root as mugan, and it looks like a temporary, it is a temporary thing. It can be picked up by a bulldozer and moved or by a crane. And it's a fortified mobile shelter. It's above ground. And it's built to be fortified in case you're walking on the street, because in Sderot and in other towns near there, you have 10 to 15 seconds to seek shelter. It's a much shorter experience, a much shorter time of the alert system there, because you're so close to the Gaza Strip. And so these things are built along the street so that people can always find shelter. Okay. The other form of a milchav mugan that maybe many of you have or are concerned about having is a mamad. You've probably heard this word a lot. A mamad stands for milchav mugan dirati. And it is an abbreviation, an acronym. Mamad. We say mamad, but it stands for milchav mugan dirati. As always in Hebrew, the fewer syllables, the fewer letters we can have, the better. That's just always the case, right? So mamad is a safe room. For lack of a better term, it is a safe room. It is after the Second Persian Gulf War in 1991, there was a directive that all new apartment buildings need to have a mamad in their units. It still isn't necessarily the case. So a lot of older buildings like mine do not have a mamad per apartment, but that is supposed to be the law. And a mamad has to fit very specific building specifications. So if you've driven through Israel before and you've seen apartment buildings that have these big spacious windows and all of a sudden on one side it's a small window, that's where the mamad is. A mamad usually has a very small window. The walls are extra fortified. The window has both a regular shades on it, but also a metal door, a metal a sliding door that locks, that goes all the way through and locks, as well as the glass window that's ultimately there will also lock. The door also is a much heavier door that will lock. Many of them will lock from the inside, and some of the horror stories we're hearing about as more and more of what happened on Saturday unfolds, hearing about whose mamad had an inside lock and which ones didn't, and the ones that didn't, how they were able to keep it closed, and how the ones that weren't. But many have a mamad, and the mamad, as you hear, is as much about incoming missiles and other forms of attack as it is an invasion coming into your home, as we see unfortunately in the south. So if you have a mamad, great. If you don't have a mamad, you need to know where your closest milchav mugan is at any time. That could be a stairwell in a building. That could be the miklat in a building. That could be your mamad. That could be a friend's mamad. A good friend of mine, I'm watching over his house as he was called up for reserve duty, and he happens to have a mamad. So when I'm not feeling particularly safe, I know I have that space anyways, even if he was there. Okay, that is what a mamad is. It comes with very specific specifications, what makes it a safe room. When we talk about Pikura Oleh, and we're going to talk, hopefully, God willing, we're going to get back to normal soon, in which case municipal elections are coming up. We're going to talk more about how this country is further divided, not politically or ideologically, but geographically and administrative-wise. I put these on here because you are hearing a lot about this in terms of breaking down the city and responsibility, and unfortunately people who have been murdered on Saturday and who they are and their local officials and so forth. But in Israel, we are broken down into 7 mechozot. A mechoz is a district, and these are usually used for administrative and judicial reasons. We have 7 mechozot and a further 16 subdivisions, subdistricts. Again, you don't normally hear this except in the context of district courts, but you do hear a lot of this in the news recently about what's going on. There are 6 of them. There are 7 of them, excuse me. South, Center, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa, North, West Bank / Judea and Samaria, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so there are 7 of those, and then they're further broken down into an il or an iria, a city or municipality. These are broken down by the population size of each. I think it's 150,000 is the threshold to be a municipality in Israel, a city, il or iria. The next size is moatza mekomit, and the next one is moatza ezorit. Right? Moatza ezorit, regional council, is the smallest, meaning it has the smallest amount of people living there. It doesn't necessarily mean geographically it is. So you've probably heard a lot about moatza ezorit or moatza mekomit, this or that. Sha'ar HaNegev, Eshkol, Ramat HaNegev, all these ones in and around the Gaza periphery that have been exceptionally affected by what's going on, as opposed to Iriat Sderot, the city or town of Sderot, which is big enough to be its own municipality, right? So that's what you hear. A little bit of munitions information, because those are important to understand, again, what's happening and the difference of what you're hearing in the news and things like that. A missile is til. Til or tilim are missiles. That could be either offensive missiles or defensive missiles, right? Kipat Barzel, Iron Dome, is a defense system, and that also uses tilim as its primary weapon, right? It intercepts what is incoming to us. A barrage, and you'll see this when you're watching the news, or you're hearing the siren go off, or the app on your phone is going off, and there's a large volley of missiles coming in. We call that a barrage in English. In Hebrew, we call that matach. Okay, matach with a tet. This word with a taf is metach, tension. No less relevant, but matach with a tet, metach with a taf, tension. Okay, matach. So you'll see matach tilim al Otef Aza, or matach be'otef Aza, a barrage of missiles on the Gaza periphery. Okay, another word you're going to hear a lot is nun tet, and it will simply be called nun tet. Like a lot of militaries around the world, the IDF has its own jargon, and a lot of it are comprised of acronyms and abbreviations. This one is no different, and we know it's an abbreviation, first off, because we're just saying letters, nun and tet, but also those 2 apostrophes between usually the second to last and last letters of a word indicates it's an abbreviation or an acronym. In this case, nun tet means neged tankim. So you are going to hear, especially even if there isn't directed towards a tank itself, you will hear about tile nun tet, right? Anti-tank missiles. Often these are shot at the communities immediately around the Gaza Strip because they are short range and they still inflict a lot of damage. And then the other one you're going to hear a lot about is patzmal. Patzmal or patzmarim are mortar shells. It stands for ptsatsat malgema. Ptsatsa is an explosion, right? It's something, an incendiary, uh, a bomb also, and malgema is a mortar. You can also think of it. The patzmal can also be an RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade, but a malgema is a mortar, usually meaning it makes a lot of noise, it makes a lot of flashes and smoke, and there is damage, but it's not nearly as much as a nuntet, an anti-tank missile, and certainly a teal, a missile itself. Okay. Some of the verbs you're going to hear a lot of. These aren't the most, positive words, but no language is 100% positive, and this is also our situation. So I just want to be sure that you're all well prepared. Lishagil means to send. Think of this more as to like a volley, right? We use lishagil in the context of missiles being sent. So shigul tilim, a volley, a delivery of missiles, meaning that they've been shot at one side or the other. Okay, but that's what lishagil is. Lishagil is not used to like send a letter. We use the verb lishloach, right? If I want to send a letter or a package or something like that, we use the verb lishloach. Lishagil is also related to the word, for example, for ambassador, shagrir, right? The person who is the envoy of one country to another. Shagrirut is an embassy, right? The envoy, the physical space of the envoy from one country to the other. So that's where this word is related, and that's what we need to think of it as, sort of to send something in the way that we don't say to send a letter or to send a delivery. Okay. Liyaret is to intercept. Not that you should ever know this word other than in the context of war, unfortunately, but liyaret is to intercept. So that is what, for example, Kipat Barzel, you'll hear Kipat Barzel huf'ala, Marechet Kipat Barzel, that word we had before, Marechet, right, system. The Iron Dome system had been operated, huf'ala, passive tense, past tense. Huf'ala was operated. Vehayu yirutim, and there were interceptions. Right? So you'll hear this word a lot, leyaret, in all of its different conjugations, meaning to intercept a missile. Usually that's the context. Lechasel and lenatrel are used interchangeably in the news, unfortunately, when it comes to terrorists. Not unfortunately, but when we have to use these words, it's usually in the context of terrorists. Lechasel means to liquidate or eliminate. Lenatrel is to neutralize. It comes from the English lenatrel, to neutralize. We have a lot of Hebrew words that are built like that. We've talked a lot about them in the past for sure. But also a mivtza chisul, a liquidation sale. We use the same root for lechasel, to liquidate. Oftentimes we, at least I like to think the only time I hear this word is in the context of a liquidation sale. An odd word for sure, but that's also the word we use here in Hebrew. Okay, a few more words, and then I want to get to some questions, and I also want to send you some practical information. Nifila is a falling, any kind of fall. It can be a person falling, it can be an object falling. We usually use this word with regards to a missile that has not been intercepted and where it has fallen, either the missile itself or the resisim. Resisim is the shrapnel from either a missile or the intercepting Iron Dome missile. Okay, and pigia is a strike. Pigia comes from the same root as the verb lifgoa, to hurt. So it's an injury, an impact, a strike, or a blow. It all comes from the same word, pigia. Okay. And then finally, two words that hopefully we get to at least one of these, hopefully soon, with a little bit more, well, who knows. Hafsakat esh means ceasefire. Hafsaka is a stop. And esh is fire, but esh also means fire in the sense of gunfire or any sort of ammunition. It's not just a fire. It's fire from munitions as well. So hafsakat ish is a ceasefire, the cessation of fire, right? And then a term which is not Hebrew, but is important to know that you are living in the Middle East, you need to know this term, is hudna. Hudna is a temporary ceasefire. And it's specifically understood to mean a temporary ceasefire. It comes from the Quran, where a temporary ceasefire would be declared by both sides, where they would be able to collect their fallen, regroup, and then resume the battle. We use this term both for humanitarian ceasefires, but we also use this, for example, for a long time, there was understood to be a hudna between Israel and Hamas with regards to that, Hamas will agree to a 10-year hudna, in which time they will not unprovoked shoot any missiles towards Israel. Those were all sorts of words that were used in the past. We still use this word hudna to understand a ceasefire that is not necessarily going to cease anytime soon. A few more things. I want to show you the two news sources I use, and I've shared these with you before, to understand what's going on a real-time basis in Hebrew. They're not complicated, but they do require some effort on your part when you're learning Hebrew, regardless what level you're at. Let me show you a little bit of what I watch on a regular basis. Sorry, let me just open it up on my TV, or computer rather. Here it is. Okay. Okay. So we have two things. One, remember that if you are in Israel, all if you're in Israel, all major news stations are broadcast for free. So that's channels 11, 12, and 13, all broadcast both on your TV, but also on your app, on your phone, through apps, through YouTube, and also on their website. So the one I often watch is Kan. Kan is Israel's public broadcaster. It's channel 11 on TV. But it is also, sorry, let me just reshare that so you can see better the video. There it is. Share sound. Okay, I can't seem to do that, which is fine because you don't need to hear it right now. But Kan is kan.org.il, kan.org.il. I watch this for a couple reasons. One, it's public broadcaster, so it is not commercial. It is a little bit easier to watch. It is a little less noisy. It's a little bit just more manageable to hear. They're not screaming at each other. It also has a really good gender balance on their panels. Not just the anchor people, but the spokesmen and the experts who come in. You'll see a lot more women on Khan than you will on the other stations. And just to say, there are quite a lot of women who are very talented and very well experienced in the fields of safety and security and politics and geopolitics to speak. And they do a really good job at it, and they do a really good job in general of content. But that is the website the news I normally watch. And they will have, obviously, if something, God forbid, happens, they'll have both at the bottom of the screen, that running thing, as well as on the right-hand side, alerts as to what's happening. The other one, which is more text-based, but is very, very updated. We've talked about this one before for sure. Let me open this up. Is the other major, this is the biggest news station in Israel, Channel 12. And Channel 12, in addition to having their news online, as well as on TV, have their own basically version of Twitter. So they have their own news feed on the left-hand side. If you go to their website, right, I'm on their news website here. Let me make sure it's still open when I go on this. Right, so if I go to their website, it says here on the left-hand side, Chat Katavim. Chat is chat, and Katavim are writers, but specifically with regards to news writers and correspondents is the best term for it. So you can see the live stream is already playing, but on the left-hand side, no matter where I go on the news website, you'll also see their version of Twitter. They're chata katavim, and you can get updated information on a regular basis, right? So apropos Pikura Oleh, here's the latest directive from Pikura Oleh as we were talking about half an hour ago, right? This is from Hanchayot Pikud HaOleh, the Pikura Oleh's directives that are from Miyom Sheni, Tisha Asiri, from the 9th of October at 8 p.m. until Tuesday, the 10th of October at 6 p.m. So what does it say? It says everyone in these blue sections, what they need to do. So the blue section on the right-hand side tells you where you are. So it says Otef Azah, the periphery immediately around Gaza Strip, Marav HaNegev, the western Negev, Melkaz HaNegev, the central Negev, Marav Lachish, the western part of the Lachish region, Lachish itself, Shvelat Yehuda. Shvelat Yehuda is the area in and around Beit Shemesh. Ashvela, so everywhere just southwest of that, so Rehovot, Kiryat Gat, Kiryat Malachi, Maskeret Batya. Yalkon, the area around the Yalkon River, which includes places like Petach Tikva, Ramat HaSharon, Hod HaSharon. Dan, which is here in Tel Aviv, so Tel Aviv, Ramat Gan, Givatayim, Chulon, Bat Yam, Herzliya. Sharon is from Herzliya and Ramat HaSharon north into Netanya and Ra'anana. Yehuda, Shomron, Yerushalayim. Yehuda and Shomron, West Bank, Yehuda, south part, Shomron, north part, and Yerushalayim. Here are the directives. You can see this on their website, obviously bigger, because this is part of the chat, it's going to be small, right? You can see this on their website. Go to Pikura Oleh's website. You can simply Google it and find it. You will find a bigger graphic of this, right? But it says here, congregations and services in an open area up to 10 people, in a building up to 50 people. The beaches are closed to the public in our region here. So again, everywhere from Netanya and Ra'anana and Kfar Saba south is what we're talking about, including Jerusalem and Yehuda and Shomron, Judea and Samaria. You can, in terms of workplaces, ניתן לקיים פעילות במקום שאפשר להגיע ממנו למרחב מוגן תקני בזמן ההתמוגנות. Anywhere where there is a safe space that you can get to within the directed time can be open for work. And in terms of educational and academic services, everything is closed. It then goes down to Kav Ha'imut. The next line here says Kav Ha'imut Golan Tzafon. Kav Ha'imut literally translates to the confrontation line. It's an old word from when Israel controlled southern Lebanon. All the strip along the Lebanese border in northern Israel is called Kav Ha'imut, and Golan Tzafon, the north of the Golan Heights, have the following directives. You only 30 people can be together outside and up to 300 people inside. Beaches along both the Mediterranean and the Kinneret are closed. Mekom Avodah, Mekomot Avodah, workplaces, same directive as before. Only places that can guarantee you getting to a safe space, that have a safe space and you can get to in the time. No academic services. The rest of the country, there isn't much of the country that's not included in this. The upper and lower Galil, Haifa, certain parts north of Netanya, and certainly the far south of Israel, getting towards Eilat, are not included in these. You can have gatherings up to 1,000 people, working without restrictions, and no school. Okay, so this is some of the many information you'll get on Channel 12's information here. Wow, news just gets worse and worse, doesn't it? So this is Channel 12's news. This is the most popular news station in Israel, the 8 o'clock news. As you see, it's streaming in the back. Unfortunately, I don't have audio operable right here. But what it is saying here, again, a lot of them are built the same way. This is the major headline as of now. Sorry to break this news, but it is saying it that saying at least 900 murdered, up to 2,600 wounded. לפחות 900 נרצחים. נרצחים means murdered, and we're using that term purposely, murdered, not killed. כ-2,600 פצועים. When you see ke before a number, that kaf with a dash here, that indicates approximately. As we would say in English, like, but it's really approximately. But what it said before there was, since Shabbat, more than 100 bodies have been pulled from Kibbutz Be'eri, which saw a significant attack by Hamas on Shabbat, on Saturday. And this is one of their correspondents, Gilad Shalmo, who's reporting from one of the roadblocks down south. Okay, so I want to share with you those two news outlets, Mako, channel 12, and Khan, channel 11. You can see both of those streaming online. When we post this on YouTube, as well as send it by email, we'll give you those links to those places so you can watch the news as your own and grow your Hebrew, as well as be really informed by both of them. The only last thing I want to say before I turn to your questions, and this is a great chance, by the way, if you have a question, to write it in your Q&A, is I have been sharing a lot on my own social media feeds a very important service. There are some amazing opportunities out there, first off, in general, to be a part of the relief effort from the Oleh, from the home front. Not just, what's happening and what's the reaction of the government or the military, is it happening or not? There's a lot that the private sector has already done. It has already galvanized itself to collect donations and also collect supplies. So in your local area, here in Tel Aviv, we have 2 or 3 different stops where you can not only collect food, bring food and items that both displaced families and soldiers about to go into battle need. So non-perishable food, toiletries, basic clothing, as well as more advanced equipment. You can go to one of these places and not only donate, but you can also help package things together. A lot of these places have huge warehouses where they're packaging goods. It had been in Kikar Dizengoff here in Tel Aviv. It's now moved up north to either the Namal Tel Aviv, the Port of Tel Aviv, or the Exhibition Center, Expo Tel Aviv. Other cities have their own. Check with your municipality where there is. There are a lot of charity drives going on, both within Israel and without, and there are a lot of great links to that. Nefesh B'Nefesh has sent a lot of those out on social media. So Nefesh B'Nefesh also has a call out for anyone who is a licensed or practicing therapist or doctor who's looking to help. You see a lot of these. There's a whole form, especially for social workers and psychologists who can speak multiple languages. Even if you can't speak Hebrew yet, there is definitely a need for English therapists right now. Even if you are not licensed in Israel, they are looking for help. So refer to Nefesh B'Nefesh's website for that. There's also a lot of great nonprofits that regularly work with victims of trauma or people experiencing psychological and emotional need. One of them is called ERAN, ERAN, and they have a hotline that's been set up specifically for Olim, specifically in English and other languages that Olim speak. If you or someone you know needs support, and everyone should feel comfortable asking for support. This is hard on everyone. You don't have to be from the South. You don't have to have someone serving. You don't, God forbid, have someone missing or murdered to reach out for support. We all need it in some form. You can call for free, asterisk 3201. And you'll get free support. A lot of private companies are reaching out now to start helping, not just because a war has been declared, and just like in other countries, that means mobilization of certain things that can only be done with a war call. But for example, I have Golan on my cell phone. Golan just sent me a text a short time ago that said, in light of the situation, all Golan customers have unlimited internet coverage and internet browsing through the 14th of October, which is really helpful. El Al has lowered their prices for flights for people, especially who are trying to get back to loved ones here, and also who received a reserve call up. So we're slowly seeing that galvanized, but there are a lot of different ways you yourselves can help. Equally important is to take care of yourselves first and before everything. If you don't feel safe physically, mentally, emotionally, that comes first. There's a lot of support that Nefesh B'Nefesh is sending out, is directly helping with, as well as your local municipality. So please reach out. A lot of it is being translated into English very quickly. There's a lot of opportunities to help with people. Okay, I'm going to stop talking, answer some questions. What is the difference between an azaka and a hatra'a? They're used interchangeably. That's a great question. Those two words, azaka and hatra'a, are very similar, right? An alert, or I have azaka here as an alert or an alarm, and hatra'a as an alert. Hatra'a is like a general alert, right? Azaka is a more immediate alert and usually a much more pinpointed alert. It comes from the same root as liz'ok, lahaz'ik, to call out, to scream out. So it's a very different, they come from two different contexts. They're used interchangeably though. But usually hata'a will be like an advanced warning versus an azaka is a more immediate warning. That's usually how you see the difference as used in the news, at least from what I've seen in the last 2.5 days of coverage. I heard an Israeli in Sderot refer to a dimension. Is that another name for a safe room? Yes. Not so Meimad, that's actually a great point. I'll write it here. Meimad is a dimension. And that's Meimad. Mamad is a safe room. Meimad is dimension. They sound very similar. They are both physical spaces, but they mean different things. Meimad is a dimension. Mamad is a safe room. And mamad is an abbreviation. Meimad is a full-blown word. My building has what's called a mamak, one shelter on each floor of the apartment building. What does the last letter stand for, and what is the letter in Hebrew? What do you think it is? If mamad is merchav mugan dirati, and dira is an apartment, meaning this is a single family or single unit safe room, protected space, a mamak is a merchav mugan kumati. Kuma is a floor. Kuf vav mem hey, right? So merchav mugan kumati, a mamak, is a floor safe room, meaning it's for the entirety of that building's floor, not individual units, which is a mamad. Dirati, apartment, comes from the word apartment. Kumati comes from the word for floor, as in the floor of a building. Not as in like the ground floor, but kuma, like kuma ishona, so forth, second floor, third floor. Okay, so a mamak is a floor-wide safe room, meaning it's for all the inhabitants of a given floor. Great question. Do you have cheat sheets? Yes, you will get a copy of this sheet. Means you are a first-time user, which is great. Thank you for coming. You will get a copy of this spreadsheet by email, and it will also be uploaded with this recording of this video on YouTube in the next few days. All of our previous lessons and their respective spreadsheets can be found on YouTube. The link for the spreadsheet will be in the comments or the description of the video. Any relationship between Yom Teruah, a day of warning, get the letters in it, have ayin in the word for warning and aleph. Any connection or totally different? Again, they sound so similar, right? Hatra'ah versus tru'ah sound really similar. And I said tru'ah with a little bit more of an accent on the ayin to make sure that you understood the difference. But that's why these two words get mixed up all the time. Hatra'ah, harta'ah, because they sound so similar and are dealing with very similar contexts. Same with tru'ah. Lahatria is another word. Lahatria is to alert. Or to warn. I didn't put that here as well, but yes, they're all interrelated. Is the approval for Israel to go to war strictly the prime minister's, the PM's cabinet, or the entire Knesset? Great question. In Israel, the declaration of war, according to the basic laws of Israel, are the cabinet. It is neither the Knesset nor the prime minister. It is the cabinet, and it was agreed upon yesterday retroactively to start on Saturday morning at 6 a.m. with the first attack. But yes, we are officially in war, not in a military campaign as we've been in the past. The website, I see a lot of people asking this question. Okay, kan.org.il. Okay, I'm going to write it in, you're going to get links to it. Don't worry about it. You can also just simply Google it. In English, it's spelled K-A-N, kan. Kan means here. Okay, in Hebrew, kan, kaf, aleph, nun means here. Okay, so kan. The other one is channel 12. Online, it's n12.co.il, news channel 12.co.il. Okay, all these, if you're in Israel, you can broadcast for free. If you're outside of Israel, you will probably have to use a VPN to get around the commercial block of it. That's much more complicated than what I can explain right now, but look up what a VPN is if you don't know already. Someone asks if hanchaya is the same as a hora'ah. So just like in English, we have two different words. Hanchaya is a directive, okay? And a hora'ah is an instruction. Okay? Hora'ah. Okay, hora'ah is an instruction. I don't know why I put that there. Hora'ah is an instruction, hanchaya is a directive. What's the difference? I ask you what the difference is in English. Meaning I can't necessarily tell you, but yes. Hanchaya is usually a directive, meaning both of them have the force of you need to do this. Okay. Is there a connection between marechet and erech, appreciate value? Yes, great question. Both marechet, right? Marechet, maracha, leharich, to value or to estimate, haracha, an evaluation. All of them come from the same root, ein resh chaf, which also means value. But they are definitely all using the same shoresh together. Great question. How did you word that they need specialists for victims of abuse or victims of what? Not quite sure what you mean with that question. Happy to answer if you can specify what you mean there. You do need a VPN if you are outside of Israel. Khan from channel 12. Khan often works for me outside of Israel, but I'd like to think that's residual effect from being registered in Israel. But whatever that is, sometimes you can get it, sometimes you can't from abroad. Some other questions here. Let me get to, and this is your last chance to ask any questions if you haven't. Shigul means launch. That's a much better word for it. L'shagel, to launch. Much better way to translate it. Thank you for that. Infiltration, we have a lot of different words for that. The word that they're using most in, there's actually several different words that we use for infiltration in the news right now. Let me write a couple of them. There's two major ones we're using. The first is chadira, pritza. There is another word, we're not using that term specifically here, so I'm not putting it up here yet. Chadira and pritza, both can be translated as infiltration, but they mean different things. Chadira means infiltration in the context of penetration. Infiltration, penetration. Okay, so an area was penetrated. This is the word that they're going to use. A pritza comes from the word lifrotz, which means to break through. Infiltration, as in to break through, not a breakthrough. You can say breakthrough as in pritzat derech, a breakthrough in science, right? I'll write that here. Pritzat, pritzat derech, right, is a breakthrough as one word, meaning something extraordinary. But to break, as in to break through a wall or to break through a fence or to a thing like that, is pritza, just on its own. Chadira is penetration. So for example, you'll see in the news, they'll use the word chadira in the context of terrorists infiltrating into Israel from Gaza, but that they broke through the fence, right? So mechablim, terrorists, chadru letoch Israel. Terrorists infiltrated into Israel, but mechablim, terrorists, partsu lagader ben Gaza ve'Israel. The terrorists penetrated, they broke through the fence separating Gaza and Israel. Okay, so that's what the two of them mean. Great question. They need therapy for victims. Therapy is for everyone. Anyone who needs help. We have a lot of different forms of therapy. There are many social workers who are needed for people who have been displaced by the war, people who don't know the status of their loved ones. There are still an untold number of people who are missing, who have either been kidnapped or murdered, and those people need support. And until the government and military gives that support, there are many nonprofits that are providing that. One of them is the one I gave that number before for ERAN, but that's also a hotline for anyone who's in need of help right now, emotional and mental help right now. Okay. Who do I contact to volunteer as a therapist? I have 30 years experience as a social worker. Wonderful. I'm gonna open up really quick the link for that, because it's a really great service that Nefesh B'Nefesh is providing, and I want to be sure that you have that link. Just 1 second. Yes, thank you for volunteering that, and I'll put it in the chat right now so that everyone can see it, and I'll also make sure that it goes out with the recording in the next few days as well. Just 1 second. That is taking an extraordinary long time. Let me do it a quicker way. Hold on. I just sent this link to someone else. Copy. Brilliant. Okay, just 1 second. Let me pull it up. I think this is it. Let me just check it before I send it to you all. That this is the right link. Yes, wonderful. Okay. The link I'm putting in the chat right now, and again, I'm not looking at the chat, I'm only sharing it there, is a link for anyone who knows or who is qualified to be a therapist. Social worker is very needed right now for a lot of people, and in multiple languages. So I just shared that in the chat, and we will send that on with the recording of this video. Question, why does the death toll keep getting higher? The way that this attack happened, in its brutality, in the amount of people who are missing, there are a large number of people we don't have a status on them, and also the barbarity in which it was done means that it's going to take a while to identify people. Those who've been watching the news and keeping up with the news, they are setting up 2 different places in the country to come if you have a loved one who is missing. And loved one usually means a first-degree relative, and specifically you've been asked to bring in a personal item of them that has DNA on them, because they need to be identified if, God forbid, the worst case situation happens. The death toll keeps happening because security forces have also only been able to get to certain parts of the country after heavy gunfights and battles to see the full extent of the coverage and full extent of how many people are murdered and are on the ground here, and how many people have been kidnapped, and we just don't know where they are. So it is going higher the more that security forces are taking control back in the south. But yes, that number does keep going up. Can US-based therapists offer their services on Zoom? I would just refer to that link I just shared with you and see if it's there. I'm going to send it again. Sorry, I did not show in chat. Sorry, I'm sending it again, folks. There. Please check the chat. It should be there right now. You'll see it's a Google form, but it is in the chat now. And we will send that out again in the context of sending out this link. Whether they need online therapists, I don't know. But you should fill out the form regardless, because maybe some people will. Maybe you will have loved ones who are in America and can't get back to Israel right now and need that kind of support. Okay. With that, we do need to stop as we're well over time. But thank you all so much. Toda rabah. Thank you all for joining. Please take care of yourselves. Please take care of each other. I hope to see you here next week under much quieter times. We will hopefully get back to our regularly scheduled program of all sorts of very important lessons, no less important than today, of how to survive and also thrive in Israel with modern Hebrew, regardless of what level you are at. Very practical, just as you heard today. Toda rabah, thank you all so much. Please be in touch with any questions you have. Hebrew@nbn.org.il. You will get a copy of this by email as well as on YouTube in the next day or so. Take care. Toda rabah and lihitraot. See you all very soon.